Welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. The Pharmacy Leaders Podcast is a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, with interviews and advice on building your professional network, brand, and a purposeful second income from students, residents, and innovative professionals.
Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast. My APPE student, Alison Russell from the University of Iowa, is finishing up her last day, and we had a conversation that there are some things that it'd be really nice to know at the beginning of the APPE rotation, like where's the microwave, where's the refrigerator, and things like that. So what we thought we'd do is something a little bit different, and we're going to ask those questions and answer those questions for this rotation, but it just is an easy way for you to maybe make it a little bit easier for your rotation as well, and then maybe ask the student that's there now or ask them ahead of time so that you can have those answers and just be ready to go day one. So, Alison, do you want to first tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get started with the interview?
Yeah, so thank you for having me. I'm, like you said, Alison. I'm from the University of Iowa. I'm a P4, and I'm studying at the University of Iowa College of Pharmacy. Otherwise, I'm from Oskaloosa, Iowa, so really not too far from home. And then this is my third rotation block.
Cool. All right, well, let's start off. So you arrive at an APPE, and you've got your lunch in your hand. You decided to bring your lunch with you. First question, where's the refrigerator?
Right, so maybe, I'm sure all APPE students are wondering this, and they hate to open the conversation with their preceptor with these kind of questions. So
where's the fridge?
Yeah, it just sounds, silly. So instead of asking, they'll just let their lunch get hot, or I don't know. So the fridge at DMAC is located actually in your office. There's a little fridge in there if you need to keep it in there. Otherwise, you can just set whatever you have within that room.
Yeah, I feel bad. So there's actually a full refrigerator down in the faculty lounge that you could have had access to, but you've got your own personal fridge up here. And we should tell you ahead of time that the office is actually a conference room that we rarely use, so it's pretty spacious for an office, and it's got two walls of windows. So if you've had an APPE rotation where maybe you're a little closed off in the basement, or you've got that drive-through window, this will be a lot more natural light than maybe you're used to. Okay, well, second question. So you've got your fridge. You want to cook your food. Where's the microwave?
Right. So the office has a fridge and a coffee maker, all things like that. But the microwave is actually down on the first floor. There's two, whichever one you want to use. But right when you walk in the door, it's pretty easy to find. Just take a left. There it is.
Yeah, and again, I feel bad in the faculty lounge. There's a third microwave that probably gets used a lot less. So, but the staff here does clean the microwaves every day. You mentioned a pet peeve was that to have a microwave that people continue to use, but nobody ever cleans.
Yes, it's kind of gross.
Okay, so let's say you decided, or maybe you didn't have time to bring your lunch. Where would you go eat, or where did you go eat when you were here?
So I pretty much brought my lunch every day, on a budget here with these APPEs. But yeah. If you didn't bring it or you happen to have nothing to bring, so next to the building you're located in is called the Student Center at DMAC, and you really can't miss it when you park in the parking lot. But within that Student Center, of course, there's a gym, coffee shop, things like that. But they also have a Subway and a pizza place. So if you happen to forget it, it's a really easy fix.
Yeah, so Leaning Tower from downtown Ankeny is here. Made Right is here. There's a Subway, and there's some food at Cafe X. Like sometimes I'll just go get those. What are they called? They're like protein bites.
The energy bites.
And, energy bites things, and yogurt and stuff like that. And then you've got all of Prairie Trail if you really want to go off campus, but you kind of chilled out right here. Mm-hmm. And then how long do you get for lunch? I'm sure it's in the preceptor manual somewhere in those many pages.
Yeah, I guess I never knew how long I got for lunch, but what I did is I just would heat up my food. I don't know, it only really takes you 10 to 15 minutes to eat it, so, after that, I guess if you want to hang out on your phone for a few more minutes or whatever you want to do, but I just kind of ate lunch, however long it took me, and then just kind of started back up on some work, so I don't know. What is it? Is it 30 minutes? Is that
I don't know. I don't. Everybody always eats their lunch while they're working. So I think it's, if you're going to get ready to become a pharmacist, you might as well just eat your lunch while you're working. That's just kind of how it rolls. But no, I mean, it is nice to kind of take a walk, and a couple other students would take a walk for lunch and kind of stretch your legs. So if you really want to get out there, there's a lake, DMAC Lake, and there's about a mile loop around the lake, or you can just go outside. As we get to winter, it'll be a little bit different. Okay, well, we've covered food, but even more important than food possibly is where's the coffee?
Yes.
And tell me a little bit about where you would go get your coffee.
Okay, so I guess it's pretty great about this rotation. So you have coffee on campus. So next door, again, at that student center, there's a coffee shop called Cafe X. And so if there's a line, they're really quick, but they have this really cool thing. You can get a punch card. So you buy 10 coffees. You get your, I think it's 11th one free or something like that. And, of course, in 5 weeks, only about 2 coffees a week. That's pretty doable.
Okay. Well, Ahmed, who did his P3 rotation here, always saw him over there getting coffee, too. Mm-hmm. So, but, yeah, you could technically make it here if you really wanted to, but you'd have to clean the coffee machine. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. There's something about somebody else making it for you.
Yeah.
There's just
flavor.
Yeah, exactly. And Cafe X, they've got a little more background to them. I had them on the Ankeny podcast where they actually go to like San Francisco for a week to kind of pick out the coffees that they're going to be serving this year or this half the year. And one of them was, I believe, from Columbia. It was completely female owned in Columbia, and they supported that group. So kind of cool. They've got more of a mission to what they do in terms of coffee. So, but very important part of making sure that you're successful in your APPE.
Right.
Okay, well, let's talk about the actual office and work area. I don't get to see what other offices and work areas are like, so maybe talk a little bit about what other offices have been like, and then we can kind of talk about this one.
Yeah, so for my first 2 rotations, we were mainly in a basement or there wasn't windows kind of thing. So you're in a hospital, you're not really in this nice, spacious, window-looking scene. And then in a community pharmacy, there's windows, but generally it's a drive-through window. So that's what I've had so far until I've gotten here. This office is so nice. Like you said, 2 walls of windows. You can see the whole parking lot.
Yeah, so I didn't know what it was like at other ones. I've heard that students do get put in the back. I've heard bathtub or near a bathtub or something like that, where it's kind of storage area. So anyway, that's something that was kind of new to me. But you also want to know how to get into the office if it's closed off. So we have security here that you need a key card. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so getting into the office, you have a white key card that will unlock and lock the door. So you can use it to unlock it, put all your stuff in here, but if you want to leave for lunch or the restroom, whatever you're doing, you can just lock it up with that key and your stuff is fine all day long. So just using that key card. And
then knowing that my office actually locks itself, so don't get yourself locked out.
Yeah, so you need the key card to unlock Tony's office, but then if you leave the key in there and the door shuts, you're out of luck, I guess.
And don't lose the key card.
No, we don't have a replacement.
Yeah. Okay, and then this is something that has been completely different for each student that comes in. Can I leave the office? And I guess as a preceptor, I'm like, of course you can leave the office. Why would you stay in the office all day? But some people want to stay here. So tell me a little bit about what do you do to stretch your legs or maybe get a little bit different scene? Yeah, so you can leave the office again. You don't care. So it's a college campus. There's other locations throughout. If you want to sit outside, you can. The Cafe X actually has a little section to make you feel like you're kind of in a coffee shop. That's kind of cool. I stay here. I like this view. It's not bad. It's easy. So it's whatever works for you. Just making sure that if you're meeting with you, that you know where each other are at. So yeah. And then because the gym's right there, you can sit there, have your coffee, watch other people work out, and feel like you've gotten a workout and don't actually have to do one. Yeah. Okay. Another thing that's always kind of nice to know is when do you work, and then does it fit with your schedule? And the same thing with each student. It's completely different with each student. Some students wanted to get here right at 8, and some students had responsibilities. Maybe they had to drop children off, something like that, or 9. I drop my kids off around 7:35, so I'm here just before 8 on good days. But then there's late start on Wednesday, which is the weirdest thing. But Ankeny does late start, so I can't drop them off till 8:45. So what kind of dictates when you want to work? Like, how do you kind of decide?
Yeah, so for myself, I've been in the summer block, so I haven't been having set lecture times throughout the whole rotation. So kind of for me, whatever worked, just picking an 8-hour time block. Of course, on those lecture days, you have to be there for that, so that's not really negotiable, but just making sure you're in that 8-hour time frame.
Yeah. Something else I don't get to see as a preceptor is how much time do you spend with the preceptor, or how much time are they supposed to spend with you? And I try to spend time with you each day up to an hour, but there's a point in the conversation where I'm talking to you and I'm just like, it's over. Like we've got everything set up. Mm-hmm. And then as we get, further into the rotation, it's just like, do you know what you're doing today? Mm-hmm. Or you know what I'm doing today? All right, good talk, Yeah. But I definitely want to be available. But talk a little bit about how much time a preceptor spends with you, and what's a good amount of time maybe, or what's not enough time.
Yeah, so I think it really depends on the block you're in. So with this one, there's flexibility. You can work at your own pace and work on, what you're working on kind of thing. So, of course, it takes some people 2 days to do a project. Some people, they're done in 30 minutes. So meeting every day, at least once, I think is beneficial for sure. That meeting can go anywhere from half hour to 2 hours, just depending on what you're working on. I mean, You always cover everything that we need to cover. It's not like you're like, hi, bye, see you later. Are you good? You know what I mean? But other rotations, of course. So my first rotation was a hospital rotation, all new to me. It was nice that they spent a little more time just kind of going over the thought process. They didn't just send me on my way with like TPN or something. I don't know. So it really just depends on the site. But for here,
yeah, they taught you how to do this, right? Yeah, it should be fine, right? Okay, so the dress is very different at a non-patient care site. You will interact with students. You'll be in front of students, but talk a little bit about the different. I guess I didn't. As a guy, we just we wear a tie, and then if we're allowed to, we don't wear a tie. But it's business casual slacks or khakis and maybe, and then nice shoes. But you were telling me that as a woman, you care about wearing certain things that I just would absolutely not even think about.
Yeah, so it's business casual here, and when you're in front of the students, I wear closed-toed shoes, of course, when you're in the lab.
Yeah.
Experiments, stuff like that. But I guess as a girl, sandals, I always want to wear sandals. And you can't wear sandals in pharmacy, I can't go to Hy-Vee in my flip-flops. But
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, and so this is a summer rotation, too. So the fact that you can wear sandals when you're not in the lab, big plus.
Okay, well, it's, again, it's something that I just was completely not cognizant of. And it's nice to know that, you're comfortable, because it's a lot of hours over a lot of weeks, and I want to make sure that you're happy being here. And then the name tag. Now, the law requires that as you're in a pharmacy that you have a name tag so that the public can identify you. And I might have just said, why are you wearing your name tag? That's weird. Because I guess no one on campus wears a name tag. We have IDs, and I guess so I'm just thinking, well, we all have our IDs. But a name tag actually, in my opinion, takes away your credibility, because if you're sitting in front of the classroom and you're teaching students and then you have a name tag that says student, it devalues, I think, what you bring, whereas if you're just dressed professionally and you're speaking to them, then I feel like you are more, they're like, oh, okay, this is the professor who's talking to me. So tell me a little bit about being in front of those students and getting, kind of credibility as a professor.
Yeah, so the name tag thing, I wore it the first day, never again, but in front of the students. So introducing yourself, you tell them your name, they don't need a name tag to stare at the whole time. You know, they can look you up on Facebook, I guess, later if they wanted to. But just introducing yourself, telling them your background gives you the credibility. You know, a fourth-year pharmacy student, so they're like, wow, you've been through this. You've done it. So you have some good knowledge for us. And, you know, we're kind of close to the same age with some students, so they kind of try to relate that way, too.
Yeah, the average student at DMAC is 25. And it takes about 5 years for them to get through 2 years of school, mostly because either they're going part-time or maybe they're making some decisions here and there. But at $150 a credit hour, it's a lot easier to change direction without too much of a financial penalty. Well, let's talk a little bit about the lab coat, because sometimes you come in with, or a student will come in with the lab coat on their arm, their name tag on their, you know, on there. Here, a lab coat, it would be uncomfortable to see someone in a lab coat, I guess, on campus, because we're not like a research campus where you would see it, or we're not a hospital where you would see people in lab coats, short versus long coat, things like that. When would you wear a lab coat? Would you wear one for lab?
Well, so at school we always wear it for lab, and here, depending on the lab, maybe you would wear it, but I mean, not necessarily, because again, you get that credibility by giving your background, things like that, so you don't really need to wear the white coat to be, you know, I'm a pharmacist kind of thing. So I didn't bring it. I don't know if I asked other students about it. You didn't mention it, so I mean, I didn't bring it, but definitely don't need to wear it here.
So you could possibly wear a lab coat if you had something, but we have aprons if we have something that you would really need to worry about. But as we start kind of integrating some more pharmacy-type things into the chemistry classes to make it more appropriate for most of the students in the chemistry classes are going to be health professionals, so it's kind of nice that we have that exposure. I know that when you go down do you call it on the hill here in Des Moines? Like it's Capitol Hill back in Washington, D.C. But I know that all the pharmacy students wear their white coats.
Yeah, we do when we go to the Capitol here. Okay. It's like wear your white for the big picture, things like that. But
okay. Yeah, again, I just, you know, whatever. All right. Well, let's talk about a clinical component to non-patient care. So let me first start with what makes a clinical rotation. My understanding is that anything over 30% makes it clinical, and then anything under 30% is non-clinical. But I also am concerned that if you have two non-clinical back-to-back, that would mean that you would have 10 weeks without going over anything clinical, and I didn't want that much separation. So let's talk a little bit about the clinical aspect here. It's 4 hours, and it's with a faculty member from DMAC who happens to also be a pharmacist at Hy-Vee. So tell me a little bit about what you did there and then how you work there.
Yeah, so that is the kind of a clinical component for this rotation site. So I went to the Hy-Vee on Fleur Drive, and I did 4 hours a week, and it just kind of depends on, so I did it on Wednesdays in the morning. You can do it at other shift times, but you just have to.
Anytime that's not lecture time, and even with the next rotation, she'll probably maybe do it still on Wednesdays because I'm not going to ever drive out to Newton. So,
just kind of clearing it up with the pharmacist there at Hy-Vee. But what I did, so I went through their platforms of Outcomes and Marixa Pro, and so we did CMRs, so comprehensive medication reviews, or if patients just had tips, so those targeted intervention programs, those were patient-specific factors. You know, it might be related to adherence, or, you know, are you taking a statin? Do you need one? Things like that. So calling the patient, I mean, there's a ton of patients on the list, so you may only get a hold of 5. Yeah. Somebody might be angry, they don't want to talk. But that's I mean, number. Yeah. So you at least get to work with patients. You're not actually helping the customers at Hy-Vee, but just kind of calling their customer base in a different way.
Well, and I think it's so important that if you're coming into a pharmacology lecture, especially, that you mention a story from that week or maybe one of the weeks that you're here and say, well, just this week I had a patient that was on 5 medications and we were able to get them down to 4 medications, because what you're really trying to do in front of the classroom is you're trying to establish your ethos or your credibility or your logos and your credibility. And you're trying to say, I'm a professor, I'm not a student acting as a professor. And when you add up having no lab coat, no no name tag, but you are dressed professionally. You are articulate. You're taking their questions, answering their questions, because over and over you kept getting hit with question after question after question. You're like, and I kind of lose a breath each time. Like I'm like, is she gonna get this one? Is she gonna get that one? And then each time you articulate and give a good answer, you gain more credibility with them. But then when you have those stories from the field, you also have those as well. And then I also want to be flexible too, that it's at a time that works for you. So it's not meant to be punitive. It's just meant to allow you to have a little bit more time with patients and kind of keep that going, especially for an Iowa student, because I know Dean Latender is very focused on the clinical aspects. And
And again, definitely bringing those stories into class. I mean, if you can put what you're putting in the PowerPoint into a real world example, people will look up from their phone, or they'll pay a little more attention. So you can get these, and it was also rewarding when you have the few patients you talk to that they actually thank you for calling them and they're happy about your service. So that was always a good feeling.
As pharmacists, we're always kind of doing something which is, this is going to be good for you. And there's an expression that everybody wants accountability until they get it. And patients are like, oh, I wish somebody would, call me to make sure I take my medicines. I wish somebody would help me get all my medicines together. Hi, I'm calling you to help you get your medicines together. Oh, man.
Yeah, right.
So,
depends.
But I also wanted to talk a little bit about networking, which is a key aspect. You could spend time with me, but I also want to make sure that you're spending time with Jane. Just happens to be one of the, at the busiest Hy-Vee that I think is in all of central Iowa. So you want to have those connections when it comes time to getting a job. So talk a little bit about some of the things that you've done in terms of networking as you've gone through your APPEs, or maybe what you're looking for in the future.
So as for networking, well, especially like you said with Jane at the Hy-Vee, she was a great person to come.
She was happy.
Yeah,
she was happy at work. She was
always happy. It was awesome. She was in a good mood. She would always be ready to answer any questions you had. You weren't really a bother to her. So that was also really good to see. Otherwise, networking, in the past APPEs that I've been on, just with if there were multiple pharmacists or in other departments, I would talk to them. Yeah. But, it wasn't huge.
I understand. And then LinkedIn.
Right, yeah. Bumping up the connections.
Bumping up the connections on LinkedIn. It's only because if you say, I like to work with people, and then somebody looks at your LinkedIn and sees 5 people, it just doesn't fit. It just doesn't match. Mm-hmm. And they may even be doing it while they're talking to you in the interview, sitting there on their phone like LinkedIn, ALISON, right. 1 L, 1 S, yep. 2 S's in Russell. Okay, I'm just making sure I've got the right one. Yeah. Checking your LinkedIn, and then when they see 500 plus connections, okay, this
right.
is
people
this
person.
Is people person. But then also that you say, okay, well, when you're in that conversation, if you're looking for a community position, what they're really worried about is, are you going to give me trouble with immunizations? Is this going to be a problem? Are you going to be somebody that rings the register, or are you going to be someone that's, well, I don't do that register thing. Right. But when you come up and say, oh, yeah, well, I've also been doing outcomes, I've been doing Marixa, they're not only thinking, all right, not only is this person not going to be a problem, but they're actually going to expand the clinical services, right. And you'll be able to work at the top of your license and all of that. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's ask just a final question. Any other bits of advice for getting in front of a classroom of students? Let's first talk about a large classroom and then a small classroom.
Yeah, so for me, I didn't have any experience really teaching, coursework. I've taught dance in the past. That's like second nature, easy. But teaching, material that they need to learn and you want them to get it and you want them to have fun with it was intimidating, I guess. I expected it, right? It's a teaching rotation. But on my first day, I was a little bit nervous, a little shaky, and that comes and goes. Within 10 minutes of the lecture, you're a little bit more
somebody was super excited about Kahoot yesterday. Holy moly.
That was awesome, though.
They're like, Kahoot. For those of you who don't know what it is, Kahoot's an online platform. It's free.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you can put questions in there. It's kind of a game. And the Kahoot only took maybe 4 minutes or 5 minutes at most. Mm-hmm. But what creates such discomfort in students, I think, is the silence. And by having Kahoot, or we forgot to use the YouTube video, but
okay.
the YouTube videos and things like that every maybe 10, 15 minutes to break it up makes it easier.
Yeah, definitely.
So the larger classroom, what other tips do you have for the larger classroom?
Well, so my first day I taught, so just jumped right into it. And
Yeah.
so I didn't actually make that lecture a PowerPoint since it was my first day. And so I guess I would say you really want to make your lecture, just be involved in it, learn the material, but then make it your own, because if you make the lecture, then you know the material, So instead of standing up there reading off the board and all nervous, you don't move an inch, kind of what I did the first day, that it helps to make it. I mean, then you at least know what's coming next, kind of thing. You can answer any questions. I also practice at home.
Yeah, I didn't know this about you or the previous students because I don't see it, and I think maybe they're embarrassed to practice, as if practice in some way shows that you are weak or something like that.
I mean, personally, again, I don't have any experience with this, and I want to be prepared. I don't want to have a question or I pull up the next slide and just have no idea what's going on. So at least reading it through, I mean, I actually practice out loud to the wall, but I think it's just beneficial because as a student, I mean, you don't know it just off the top of your head with no experience. So it helped me. It kind of got rid of some of the nervousness too.
Okay, all right. Well, and we would go ahead of time to the actual classroom. We would make sure the PowerPoints work, and then when we did get there, the computer wasn't working. Sort of. I had to turn it on, and then it was, but then it tended to work well. So talk about a little bit more about a smaller classroom. When I'm talking smaller, I mean 12 to 24 students rather than maybe 50.
So with a smaller classroom, I mean, you're still nervous. It is what it is, but getting the students involved really helps. So if you can, I kind of went off of, I think, Ahmed's PowerPoint where it was, bringing a case into the PowerPoint and then not just saying, is it A? And nobody's going to answer, So bringing the active part of the lecture, they will really start to, I don't know, chime in and just kind of make it more conversational. I mean, I was still nervous, but it was not really a big difference, I guess, between the smaller and larger classroom.
Well, let's talk about what you did well yesterday in lecture is that, so you said, okay, well, somebody in the back, can I get an answer for this one?
Yeah.
And you got crickets. Mm-hmm. And said, all right, somebody in the front.
Yep.
And you, okay, well, lab bench 2.
Yeah,
all right?
that's the best
Third
way.
row.
Third row.
Third
somebody
row,
there.
Second row. And it was first day of classes, so we didn't necessarily know their names right away and things like that. And eventually what you find is that there's like 5 people that really want to talk, and then you can depend on them. But then you also want to try to get those people that are trying to be a little quieter, trying to be hidden.
Right.
I like to call on the people that are praying to their phone.
Yep.
I see their head go down. Immediately I'm like, what do you think? Like, what was the question?
Yeah. And kind of setting the tone, like doing that from the start.
Yeah.
Then every day they come to class, they're like ready. I'm going to be called on maybe.
But we'll talk about the hours. So we had an 8 a.m. class and a 10 a.m. class. What was the difference?
So the 8 a.m. class was almost, I mean, it's 8 a.m. First day of classes. You're
Which
tired.
is late for me. I've been up since 5. And I'm like,
but man, it's like you're starting the first day with a chemistry lab. Like, can it get any better? So 8 a.m. was a little bit like kind of pulling teeth, trying to get answers. And just the attention was a little bit different versus 10 a.m. I had a whole row of people that wanted to participate, and that was awesome. And they were excited about the, Kahoot, or they were just ready, asking a bunch of questions about the lab. I mean, there's a big difference between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. Yeah. So I guess getting, me personally, I might pick 8 a.m., get that class over with, but I don't know, 10 a.m. might be the way to go.
Well, when you first got here, you also, because we also had the 4 o'clock and then the evening class. So just being cognizant that different times of day are going to be different students, and they're going to come from certain responsibilities and things like that. So any last words? We just got a couple minutes here before the rotation's over.
I don't think so. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Well, thank you for helping out so much. We really get a lot more to the students and a lot more for the students when you guys are here. So thanks again, Alison. So thanks again for listening to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast. We'll talk to you again next week.
Support for this episode comes from the audiobook Memorizing Pharmacology, a relaxed approach. With over 9,000 sales in the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia, it's the go-to resource to ease the pharmacology challenge. Available on Audible, iTunes, and Amazon.com, in print, ebook, and audiobook. thank you for listening to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. Be sure to share the show with the hashtag #PharmacyLeaders.